Fintech Chatter Podcast, brought to you by Tier 1 People, the leaders in executive search for fintech ventures.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and today's guest is somebody who's no stranger to the show, Ryan Edwards Pritchard of Anna Money. Many of you might know Ryan from his days at Cape. In what is his fourth episode now, I chat to Ryan about his journey and merging recently with Anna Money. And I'm here to talk with him about, one, the experience of finding an acquirer for the business, and two, finding the right partner so that you can grow and carry on your vision and dream. Ryan, welcome back. You're like the Oakenfold of Fintech Chatter Podcast.
Hey, listeners, it's an absolute honor to be back. Just the millionth episode we've done together, mate.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, let's put some context to it, Ryan. The last time we sat together, it was actually the 4th anniversary of Fintech Chatter Podcast. I think it was a very different world for you to the one that you're in now. And dare I say it, perhaps at the time things were on a little bit of a knife edge for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what's happened since?
Yeah, where to start with that? So I guess there's probably maybe a bit of, for anybody that hasn't come across Cape before, kind of what Cape is and then what Anna is and then that kind of journey, because I couldn't say too much when we last met up in terms of where we were. So apologies for not being able to disclose, but we were literally, as you say, knife edge, I think kind of 7 or 8 months into the acquisition process. But yeah, so background story is, so there's Cape and founder CEO of that. That is a 4-year-old startup, which is a corporate card spend management platform focused on domestic businesses and helping them get control of their expenses, get control of their employee spending, like in its simplest format. And we built an elegant platform that helps you program your expense policy into the card rails. And so that's the Cape part. We launched after building out the core infrastructure, the V1 of that, in April 2022. In the essence of the thing that I guess I hypothesized around what I was trying to solve for was how to build a smart ledger for business owners that allowed them to better manage their cash flow and to automate more of the workflow so that they could ideally become more cost efficient in terms of not needing that army of finance managers, financial controllers, accountants, bookkeepers around them so that they can stay lean, which obviously this time is pretty pressing. So that was the kind of premise of building Cape, and many challenges along the way, many lessons along the way. I think coming into a territory like Australia, you kind of realize that there are the benefits in terms of not quite the same saturation of competition that you've got per capita, say, in North America or in Europe, in the UK. But the challenges are much higher barriers to entry. And with that, specifically, you don't have the card program providers, the Marketers of the world, the Stripe issuing products ranges. You haven't got some of the providers like the Galileos that you've got over in North America. And with that, you have to make some harder choices in terms of bringing products into the market. You've got to take a much longer road to actually build out that core capability. And actually, that became a real valuable asset for us as we went through the journey. The tough situation here is like, it takes longer to get to market because you've got to build out a lot more core infrastructure. It's a lot more resource intensive. It's a lot more capital intensive, human capital as well. So you've got to manage those different things as you go through that journey to actually getting your V1 into the market and getting the product into the customer's hands, and then iterating on that product as you then go along, which is some journey in its own right. And for us, I made the decision really early on that actually the most efficient path for us for a sustainable and scalable future was to actually build directly onto the rails of MasterCard. So struck up a principal membership with them, which was a fantastic opportunity and decision now looking back. And that meant we did take a slightly longer road in terms of actually building out the core configuration and in the back end, everything to do with the card auth process, everything to do with ledger management, balance management, but still leveraging a third party for the raw processing. And we got ourselves into the market, V1 out, and we pretty much straight away started onboarding customers there and then. It was a great window to then get the product, the card, into customers' hands. And at that time, the thing that we were really kind of solving for was coming out the kind of pandemic, or still kind of in the mix of the pandemic, was the ability for business owners, financial controllers to issue cards to employees in a really trustful way. I know it sounds a bit odd, but as we know, if you're building out a team, you're needing to trust them with one of your most important resources, capital, finances. And in terms of the options that they have in the market for that specific need, it's and I've got a lot of respect for them. It's American Express, one of the biggest, best brands kind of out there in our space, and they're very good at certain things, but they're not specifically designed for that purpose to help you as a business owner to spend less money. It's all tailored towards helping you spend more money. That's the game. That's the points game. So rather than trying to play a large competitor at their own game, which would be folly, we took a slightly different path, and we tried to jiu-jitsu that in terms of how do we help businesses spend less, and in turn spend less time as well in terms of financial administration work. So that was it. Kind of going through that journey, we had hit some speed bumps. I say one of them that we dealt with was the original processor that we launched with pulled out the market. Your card processor is or the heart pumping through the blood to your system. So the best analogy, as graphic as it might be, it's ripping out and replacing processor. It's like open heart surgery. Yeah. It's pretty graphic, and doing that whilst you've got customers transacting, it's kind of like the patient is suddenly up in the dressing gown, walking around, whilst the surgeons are just going, listen, just please stop. Yeah. We need to get this job done. And for us, it was a real challenge. We'd just gone and onboarded our friends and family and moved into our closed beta phase. And we were dealing with that kind of challenge, speed bump, as I said. So thankfully, we managed to navigate that path, and we did a migration across to Thread, another processor that was kind of growing, although known as GPS back then. And we managed to get that completed. And along that journey, we'd raised a bit of capital. We secured a pre-seed fundraise that was actually done the end of 2021. So that capital had kind of taken us through to 2.5 years, helped us kind of get the product into the market. Our first couple hundred SME customers kind of on board, transacting millions of dollars, and kind of on that road to starting to generate revenue, which is absolutely what we need to be doing. But at that point in time, looking at the market at the beginning of 2023, it's a case of where do we go next and what do we do? So absolutely weighing up in terms of going and launching a seed fundraise. It was an interesting time in the market. And thankfully, we actually got approached. We didn't actually go out to the market with this in mind, but we got approached about an acquisition. And at that point in time, which was mid last year, it wasn't something that was on our radar.
11-month process. I'm assuming that you kind of had a number of discussions on the table. What made you go with Anna in the end, and what did you see as the kind of synergies that would enable you to, I guess, realize your original vision and dream for Cape?
Great question, Dexter. As we've discussed, there was a number of different term sheets on the table, and ultimately, like I've talked about, it's a case of thinking about this in terms of a 7 to 10 year journey, and how do we deliver on that promise. For us, our mission was always, build and complete expense nirvana, and to build complete payments nirvana. And thankfully, having got to know the Anna founders over a long period of time, acquisition took 10 months. There was a dating period, I guess you could say, where we could actually see culturally very similar thought process around the type of product we're trying to deliver to customers, and what that end goal looked like in terms of delivering that all-in-one spend management platform, spend management solution. So there was definitely alignment in terms of the thinking, and that was a really important thing. And for them, they saw the core infrastructure that we've built as a really important gateway for them locally into this market, but then likewise, that core infrastructure that we've built is also scalable internationally. So for them, it was one of the most appealing things, so that they could actually consume that, via an API, which we're currently building out, over to the UK, so we can go launch a business credit card in time, over to their customers, 100,000 SME customers that they currently have over in the UK. So that was a really important part of it. I know we were both at Intersect last week, and I got asked this by a moderator, Ben Ford, at the panel. What was that? Sorry? The body of fintech. You'll love that. But he asked a very pertinent question, and it was an interesting one, which was, did you ever set out kind of thinking about that, and how did you think about that in terms of the acquisition? And my response to that was just, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. Obviously, it'd be folly to say that it wasn't something that I thought about or was aware of. Clearly, you're building something of significant scale and substance. You're always aware of the fact that either you eat or you get eaten. And coming out of a market like this, in terms of smaller territory, you either quickly scale and get into those multiple geographies to make the unit economics make sense, or on the flip side, if you've built something of core infrastructure that is useful, then the reverse, ultimately somebody will look at you because actually you have something worthwhile. Now, I'd always looked at this as a 7 to 10 year type of journey. If I was fortunate enough in terms of being able to build and solve a problem that I care about, which is actually helping small business owners build more efficient, productive businesses, sleep easier at night, get to spend more time with their family, those type of things, right? And in terms of this opportunity, obviously it came along much sooner than that. And the journey was different provider locally looking at us, which was a payment service provider who wanted to actually build out an issuing kind of solution. And it would have been a very different type of direction for us to take. But because we'd built out so much of our own core infrastructure, and the card programming, the card issuing, authorization, the embossment, all of these different layers. And then there is all the other layers in terms of underwriting and data consumption that we've got as well, that we'd built out. That was why it was so attractive to them. And that would see us more working with other fintechs, lenders, in terms of our core infrastructure. And weighing up in terms of the direction, whether or not this was the right time to then actually fully dive into acquisition. Because, by the way, for anybody else who's out there and looking at this stuff, it's a really time-consuming exercise. And you get knocked on the door quite regularly in terms of these different opportunities. And frankly, you say, thanks, but no thanks. I need to focus on my day job here, as opposed to kind of going down these different rabbit holes. And at that point in time, given where the market was, given where we were, and actually, and again, I said this last week, but that old adage, which is, you can go faster alone, but further together.
Yeah.
And actually kind of looking at where we were in terms of our ability to deliver on that mission to support small businesses, spend less money, save more time in terms of administration, bookkeeping. It was a no-brainer for us to now actually start looking into what that might look like.
San as a UK fintech, Ryan, what can you tell us about them and what makes them different?
For those that are not aware, Anna, which I actually asked, why Anna in terms of the name? Is that one of the founders? No, it's not. But it stands for Absolutely No Nonsense Admin.
Right.
And Anna itself as a product sits at this perfect trifecta in terms of company formations, so helping entrepreneurs, business owners just literally get set up and doing it in a compliant, tax-efficient manner as seamlessly as possible through a pure digital experience, providing them with a business current account, So sort code, account number in the UK, BSB and account number over here. And then providing them with different payment solutions so that they can seamlessly go out, start issuing invoices and using their business admin tools so that they can get funds paid into there. And this is all delivered through a beautiful conversational interface. Literally it looks and feels like ChatGPT. And I remember when I first came across their product, and it's time stamped, I think, on YouTube from 2019, where they were doing the product demos, and I remember being like, "Wow, like that's completely different." Like all of a sudden, we're seeing the closure of bank branches, the removal of bank branch managers, and all of a sudden there was this team coming out with something which is super unique, which was building these large language models in terms of, so it's not delivered via human on the back end, it's LLMs, it's machine learning. And they're actually helping business owners, with this, what feels like, ChatGPT or a WhatsApp in terms of business owner going on there, asking about what their current balance is. Can you send out this invoice? Where's this payment? Have you captured this receipt from this employee? It was phenomenal. So Anna itself is a very comfortable in terms of turning over in the tens of millions of dollars now. 120 staff, UK headquartered, London specifically, but also got a registered address in terms of Cardiff, which is where our support team is. Commercially speaking, purely focused in terms of SMEs, freelancers within the UK. And for them, really, the opportunity in terms of working with Kate was, not literally, by the way, but like a 1 + 1 = 10 type solution. Yeah. And I'm saying it from an abstract perspective there, in the sense of they were looking at it going, well, how can we actually go and start expanding internationally as seamlessly as possible? How can we also broaden our product range? So that kind of floor to ceiling type of expansion. So a solution where it's the very entrance of a business being born through all the way through the life cycle. And, how do we capture as much of the spend that's applicable with the business? Yeah. And right now, a lot of these businesses that are using Anna solution in the UK will also have a myriad of other solutions that they might use during the course of a month, whether that's corporate cards or revolving credit facilities to help them with their cash flow management. And with those businesses, the question is, well, how do we actually keep them within our platform? Because we feel we're better placed to actually help service their needs all within there. And that's where the kind of inclusion of what we've built then kind of bolted on makes sense. Yeah. And then on the flip side, using and leveraging in terms of what we've built in Australia as effectively the footing into this geography.
What I really like about the product that you're sharing and the Anna journey, Ryan, is as a business owner, right? I've been through all of this, and I remember when I started my business and all of those challenges, like, feeling really self-conscious because of your business address. And being your home address, 4 weeks in, sent out my first invoice, and rather than jumping up and down with joy, I was, had a moment of an elation, and then was like, oh, how do I send out an invoice? What about bank accounts? So those challenges are real challenges. Like, today, looking to send an international payment, spent 8 hours with the bank just trying to get that done. Crazy that things are that complicated and complex. And then the other thing I really like is what is the journey that the customer goes on? What are the problems that they have? And what's the sequence of events that we can kind of cascade through and design the product around helping them through those? And that's a couple of things that I really love about what you're doing with Anna Money.
No, 100%. And I think there's just an interesting point just to kind of wind back on, and it's something I talk to our team about quite often, which is complexity versus complication. Yeah, and it's a really important difference because a lot of these things sometimes they can be complex but not complicated, and equally vice versa. And like with the space that we're talking about, at times it's about trying to take the complexity out of it and trying to actually tie together smooth workflows. And the best analogy I'd use in terms of this instance would be, to your point, the kind of Android modularity approach in terms of building software, building products, and like how that's been thought of versus taking more the kind of Apple holistic approach in terms of thinking about system design. And with us, I'd say, that was definitely something I thought about from day zero, which was more around vertical integration and like actually how do you build out that full stack and how do you think about the problem that a business owner is going from start to finish. You got to stay grounded in terms of actually what are the metrics that matter in terms of your customers, and like you got to organize the business or the startup or scale up, whatever else it is, around that set of problems. And you got to stay absolutely focused in terms of the customer and actually what's the thing that's going to turn the dial the most in terms of the solution that you're actually currently trying to deliver. And you got to stay dogmatic on that. So I'd say one of the things that we've been incredibly resolute on, both in terms of Cape and now into Anna, in terms of that North Star metric, has always been around the cost efficiencies and like how do we help businesses like actually save money? How do we help them ensure that $1 in their pocket feels like $1.50 from a spending perspective? How do we help their money go as far as possible? How do we cut out inefficient spending? And that's something from an analytical perspective, we've stayed very focused on, and like obviously the choices we've made in terms of the core infrastructure reflect that, because these things compound over time to allow you to deliver these type of solutions to your end customers. But you've got to stay focused on that, and you've got to stay focused in terms of why is it ultimately a customer is going to come to you to solve that problem than one of these other giants in terms of the incumbents. And there's not a huge volume in terms of alternative providers in the market. It's literally a handful. But ultimately, these are businesses that have been running for hundreds of years, with huge market caps in terms of American Express and CBA and Westpac and NAB, ANZ. So like you've got to be focused in terms of what's your wedge into the market and how are you going to differentiate against these different players.
There's something really quite unique about the strategy that you've got. What I really love is that you kind of almost bringing these virtual and digital worlds together. So with the virtual address, the offices that you've moved into here, and the setup you've got, your customers can actually come in and physically see the team in action. Whilst you've also got this great digital solution as well. And it reminds me of the early days of fintech when we had Stone and Chalk and it was a physical ecosystem. And then we saw the emergence of Bud, where you had these kind of digital ecosystems for fintechs. And we've seen this similarly with, say, Basic. And I think it's kind of bringing the, what was this kind of initial energy that really helped the Aussie fintech scene explode. But you're bringing that together for your customers who are essentially business owners. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And again, thinking about the kind of efficiencies, which from starting up, I mean, this is obviously a bit of a teaser for what products we've got to come. Yeah. But as you rightly say, because we did an office tour. Yeah. So for anybody who's listening, watching, we've just moved into a new space down at the Rocks. Beautiful, 350 square foot, enough room for 35, 40 of us before we need to expand even further. But one of the reasons, this was such a special place for us was, from an office location, the centrality to it, but also the how it's the composability of the different spaces. And actually, we have different squads here. One of the products that we're going to be launching is a virtual office address product. And, you as a business owner, me as a business owner, we know this when we form our company for the first time, we might not be in a professional space. You don't necessarily want to use your home address, but ultimately you still want to look professional. And, that's one of the products we do have that's really successful in the UK and that we're rolling out over here. And what it allows is for those companies that we're helping get set up, get incorporated, get their ABN initially, it's also allowing them to then go and actually have a professional office address, which, that they can use. And whether they're coming in to come actually pick up the post or have it forwarded on, that's part of the service. But it's one small part of a much larger offering that we're building out here.
One of the things that's really struck me about the approach that you've got, Ryan, and the approach of Anna in the UK is this real kind of data-driven kind of engineering approach to growing the business. And that, I guess that when I look at what makes businesses successful, and I'm going to give Revolut as an example, I think, is there kind of real focus, but also this obsession with data for making decisions. And this really distinguishes them, I think, because they've stayed very, very true to this. They've always stayed focused. They've always followed their principles. And I think that's really kind of helped them, in that never settle kind of, mantra that they've got. Now, certainly don't want to kind of, compare you to any other business, but I do see, in terms of the approach, there are elements of that kind of, Revolut approach. How do you see the kind of culture and, the obsession that you've got around providing moments of joy in these kind of great product experiences?
Like Revolut are absolutely phenomenal. So like, if, as a benchmark, they're an exemplar within our space. They're tearing a streak. So like, I put them kind of up there, and obviously I've seen their kind of journey over the last, now coming up to a decade, from out of London, and have known quite a few of the early team members there. And long admirer in terms of the work. And, if we can take some of the best things that they do and incorporate them in terms of how we think, then that can only be a positive thing. And I talk about the best things. But for us, in terms of what we focus on, it is absolutely about information. It's about the consumption of data. It's about staying true in terms of that North Star of what matters to our customers, like genuinely putting ourselves in the position of the business owner, which sometimes it's much easier when you are the business owner as well, but like actually thinking about it from their perspective and what are the metrics that actually matter to that business. There's kind of a mischievousness around it, but there's character, there's personality, there's fun. And I think, speaking to Edward in particular, the one thing I really admire and love that he talks about is just this innocence, the innocent fun they're trying to inject in terms of the brand itself. You're going out and you're paying with your virtual card, and there's a meow that kind of pops out. That was the original kind of thinking. It's a very unique product design, but it's trying to bring a sense of humor to how you go about your day-to-day job. And then on the flip side to that, from the large language models that we've now built and matured now over the last couple of years, fraud is actually one of the things that is absolutely at the forefront of our mind. Identifying that, especially in terms of when it comes to just more the vulnerable. And we're dealing with business owners, the very young to the very old, a real range in terms of industries and technical sophistication in terms of how to use online tools. So really we're at the forefront in terms of identifying where there might be dubious payments and actually trying to stay one step ahead in terms of would-be scammers. And that's something that I'm really proud of what the team's doing in the UK right now, is tackling that, but tackling it through AI. So they're doing a phenomenal job, and that's something that we'll be focusing a lot of attention on as we roll that out over here.
I want to ask you about talent now, Ryan, because there aren't many fintechs in Australia that have actually built bespoke platforms and some of the technology that you're talking about. I think you've also got the added challenge that fintech itself is such a unique space that you got a very small percentage of the talent pool to go at anyway. How have you gone about, I guess, finding, first of all, talent with the skills that you need, and then second, with the behaviors? And what are those behaviors and qualities that you look for when you're assessing people to join the business?
Yeah, and you've, again, articulated the point really well, which is the resource constraints. Like, frankly, you're a team of 10, maybe a team of 100, but you're taking on the mighty 10,000, 100,000, kind of the story of the Spartans, right? That literally is the case when it comes to startups. Like, you are having to go out there and pound for pound, you're having to outcompete, peers in the space that are 100, 1,000x in terms of the resources, the capital they have available. So you've got to play to your strengths, and talent does take you a hell of a long way. So I think when kind of starting on this point, you got to think in terms of the mission itself, and like you got to have a mission which, frankly, people genuinely care about. The most talented people in the market, they want to work on really interesting problems, and they want to work with really interesting software. It's like if you've not got an interesting problem that you can articulate and storytell through that, and show how their work, their code, is going to have a direct impact in terms of the lives of others and a magnified impact. It's going to be really hard not just to find those individuals, but then also retain those individuals as well. So like it has to be something which matters. It has to be something with substance. And for us, like I've talked about before, the things that we try and focus on are how do we actually help businesses become more efficient? How do we help their money go further? How do we help them be more productive? How do we help the individuals finish work earlier, spend more time with their family? Like these are all things that actually, on a human level matter. So like starting off, it's about that mission, and it's about understanding that. And it's about an understanding how do we actually offer a different environment, different challenge, different perks, and obviously take them on the journey that we're on over the next, let's say, 5 to 7 years in terms of building out something that will exit and life-changing in that kind of way. Like that's something we want to offer to people. We want to offer people an accelerated career progression, opportunities to fast-track that they wouldn't get anywhere else. In terms of attraction, we obviously acquiring talent. We work with a variety. We get talent that comes directly through referrals. If you look at the current team, so we've built out a team from scratch. But we've hired from some great other fintechs and talents come to us in terms of our head of engineering, joined us from Nano Home Loans, and we've hired other individuals join us from Bill.com, which acquired Invoice2Go, huge success story, and others from Before Pay. So we're building a great team of engineers, here, and some are coming through from referrals, our activity on, say, LinkedIn and the like. In terms of the final part of the question, what do we look for? And it's really interesting one because, you have different people at different life stages, and jumping into a startup is all consuming and is definitely not for everybody. I can say that. And, for some people, the premise that they perform incredibly well within, in an incumbent, in a corporate environment, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, by the way. It's just that's the right environment for them. That's what they've known. Startups are incredibly ambiguous. There's general goals and targets, like I've talked about, and somewhat abstractly in terms of our North Stars. Yeah. But then there's a lot of, I guess, kind of self-discretion in terms of how you go about achieving that goal. You'll be given certain tools and certain guidance, but then it's down to you to then execute towards that. And the kind of skills that you need, especially in these early stages that we look for, are looking for people who are more entrepreneurial focused, and that they've got a background in terms of problem solving, critical thinking, and can actually demonstrate that when we're actually talking to them in terms of that element, in terms of critical thinking. Personally speaking, I'm always looking at across, I guess, kind of 3 different kind of areas. I'm, clearly I high trust environment. I want people to come in and do their best possible work. That's what matters to me. I want them to be empowered to go do that work. So I'm looking for people who can clearly have that. The second thing is then just in terms of looking at the quality, and just being able to actually understand the quality of what the individuals, and I talk more about engineers because predominantly that's what we are. We're more of an engineering and design house, but like more engineering. So understanding in terms of the quality, in terms of individuals and what they've shipped, how they think about kind of overcoming problems and challenges. Obviously, personal growth is then the kind of final part of that puzzle. And whereas an individual in terms of their trajectory, you get different peoples at different trajectories. And ideally you're looking for people that have got high growth trajectories. They've got an appetite to learn. And myself from the very top, all the way down. Like I'm out of hours. I'm learning Python. I'm learning Flask. I'm React, and like I'm doing everything I can to move over from our current stack, which is all .NET, C#, across to a different stack and kind of delving into the LLMs. I expect the same from the team. I expect to see people who've got a personal interest in terms of developing their actual skills, developing their understanding, to stay one step ahead of the market. And like those are the kind of three things that we're looking for. You know, we're looking for people who really kind of like excel in quality, excel in their personal growth. You know, and again, that critical thinker that is high trust, they can get on and actually just go do the work themselves.
We're coming to a wrap, Ryan, but before we do, you've been in the UK fintech scene as kind of halcyon days. You moved to Australia and saw kind of our halcyon days as well. What's your general sense as to where the industry's at as a whole? And what do you think we can expect in 2025?
There's a lot of brilliant actors, you know, within the space that are trying to help as much as possible, you know, push and nurture the environment, and that's fantastic. And I like, we absolutely need more of that. And I'm like, I absolutely want to see more of that, because that is where competition will come through against competition. And ultimately, the more competition is, the better the services, the better the products that will get delivered to consumers, to businesses. Competition is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And like, that's what we need to see more of. The issue is then just about the actual capital and the deployment of capital, and having enough in terms of investors who've got the appetite and ability to actually, you know, invest and take an opportunity and look at the actual and assess the risk, you know, correctly. And I'd say that's, you know, at the earlier stages is obviously, and it's well documented, you know, it's obviously one of the challenging areas, I'd say, of Australia, unlike North America, which is a much maturer environment. Like, let's be clear, like you know, we're not Silicon Valley, you know, it's so early in the journey. Hopefully we see, where possible, I mean, ideally more capital being deployed to the fintechs that are in the market, because there's a lot of great solutions out there, and that's obviously the preference, is to see them grow and actually fulfill their ambition. The second, if that is not possible, is then actually where they can actually buddy up, and M&A is a great opportunity for that, so that they can actually de-risk the business, and also that they can get then the capital to build out the solution, take the product to the market, and see which is the final thing. Is like, I mean, yes, there is then the stagnasis, which you hope nobody does, but like there is that other journey, which is a much tougher place to be.
Ryan, we're coming to a wrap. Where can people find out more about Anna Money?
Great question. So best place to go is anna.money.au. So we've just recently launched our AU website. It's building out as we speak. Otherwise, you can definitely go just check out the actual main site in terms of anna.money. You can find us in terms of the usual social media places, more so in terms of LinkedIn. So if you're not following us already, be sure to go onto LinkedIn and hit the follow tab in terms of Anna Money. If you're interested in terms of what the product looks like, we are on YouTube, and there is a whole bunch of demo vids there. And equally, for anybody that's interested, by all means, if you're listening to this and you want to find out more, like, hit me up. Feel free to reach out.
Ryan, it's been fantastic to have you back for your 1 millionth episode. And wishing you and the team at Anna Money all the best as you navigate this exciting period.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us, folks. As always, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're new to the show, make sure you give us a follow on your podcast player of choice. And if it's on Spotify or Apple, make sure you leave us a review and give us a comment. It really helps in getting great guests like Ryan onto the show. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. It really does mean a lot. Until the next episode, keep well.
Fintech Chatter is produced by Tier 1 people, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll find world-class leadership talent to build world-class fintech ventures. And you can find us at tier1people.com.